Hi, I'm Ariam, and these are all the books I read in the month of September of 2025. Now, the lighting is going to be crazy, partially because I have a migraine and I need to not have direct sunlight, and partially because the sun keeps going in and out behind the clouds. But let's get started with stats. So I read 23 books and I DNF'd one. I know, crazy, I usually DNF way more. Of the books, 19 were fiction and 4 were nonfiction, and if we get more into genres, 8 were fantasy, 2 were mystery, 2 were science fiction, 1 was science nonfiction, 2 were humor, 2 were speculative fiction that doesn't fit into either science fiction or fantasy or horror. 3 were historical fiction, 1 was philosophy, 2 were history, and 2 were realistic fiction. As for age ranges, I read 3 picture books, 2 early chapter books, like aimed at early readers, 7 middle grade books, 4 YA books, 1 new adult book, and 5 adult books. Now let's get into what I actually read, and by that I mean what I DNF'd. So the one book I DNF'd was... wow, what was it called even? I don't know what it was called. It was a collection by Nikki Giovanni, the poet. It wasn't only poems, but basically it made me realize that I do not like reading poetry collections. I like reading poetry anthologies, not poetry collections, so I DNF'd that. Now for the books I read. So I started off the month with Our Shah and the Song of Death by Roshani Chokshi. This is a reread for me. It is the second in a 5-book series that I really enjoy. I think it's one of the best middle grade series ever written. Basically, we have our main character Aru, who accidentally on purpose breaks a cursed lamp, and the end of the world is going to happen, except that she happens to be the reincarnation of one of the Pandava brothers from the Indian ancient Sanskrit book, the Mahabharata, and she has to go and stop this from happening, together with her other Pandava sisters. I really love how it's written. I love her Pandava sisters. Well, there are 2 that come in the next book that didn't appear in this book that I don't love, but I do love the Pandava sisters that appear in Our Shah and the Song of Death. I think it's a great series. It balances humor and seriousness, plot and character development. Everything comes together. Then I read The Seven Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. This is a speculative historical fiction mystery, and so basically, we have our main character who wakes up in this body of a guy, and he has no idea what's going on, and he finds out that he wakes up every day in a different body in this party that's going on, like basically in a time loop, and he is pitted against 2 others, and they have to discover who murders this woman, Evelyn Hardcastle, at the end of the night in order to get out of this time loop. I enjoyed it very much overall. I enjoy the speculative element. I thought the mystery, how we discover things, was set up really, really well and built it together. However, I did not like the ending. The ending put in a plot twist that had nothing to do with anything else. I felt really disappointed because I spent all that time reading the mystery build up slowly, and suddenly this plot twist came out of nowhere. So I thought the ending was overmuch, but overall I really enjoyed the book, and I do want to read more by Stuart Turton. Then I read Inside UFO 5440 by Edward Packard. This is a choose your own adventure story, one of the originals. I do think I managed to do all of the routes. I don't really have anything to say about it. It's in choose your own adventure story. It's fun. I do think I enjoyed it. There were obviously routes I enjoyed more than others. Definitely had some racism while trying not to be racist. Published in the early 80s. And yeah, there were like some things like trying to be inclusive but failing. Yeah. Then the next book I read was Unseen Magic by Emily Lloyd Jones. This is a middle grade magical realism. I put this as fantasy in the stats, but it's more magical realism. And basically we have this girl, our main character, who has anxiety, and she lives in this town that has magic. And there's specifically a magical tea shop where you can give away one of your memories and you gain something from that. Like you can gain for instance, physical strength, and she gains, like, not having anxiety, but it doesn't last forever. And the bigger the memory you give, the longer it will last. So when the tea shop owner breaks her leg and has to go to hospital, our girl, our main character, is about to have a science fair where she has to speak out loud. And she is freaking out. So she decides to steal some tea and creates a tea monster. I overall enjoyed it. It was as I said, it was definitely not fantasy. It was more like, just, there are these magical elements that are characters that exist, and our characters are just kind of like, okay, they're here. And there was some stuff about, like, how about keeping, like, the magic of the town. However, again, I didn't like the ending. I think this is something that's going to come back a few times in this month. I don't know what it was this month that I would, like, really enjoy books and then not enjoy the ending. This one, I liked the book overall, and I do not think the ending in concept was bad. I do think that the ending was a concept that was incredibly hard to pull off, and the author did a really good job, but not good enough. Like, she tried, and it just didn't quite get there. But overall, I did enjoy this book. Then I read The Mimicking of Known Successes by Malcolm Older. This is a sci-fi that happens on Jupiter. It is a mystery as well. Oh, I guess I meant more mysteries. Yeah, I wrote this only as sci-fi. Yeah, so I read 3 mysteries, not 2. So, and basically, this is interesting because it is told not from the detective, but from the detective's best friend, kind of, perspective. So, there's a guy vanishes from the outer ring they have, like, these rings on Jupiter, and he vanishes from an outer ring where, like, there's nowhere to go to. So this detective is sent to, like, find out what happened to him. Was it murder? Was it suicide? And because he works at the same university as her estranged friend, she asks her to help her with this mystery. I did not like this book. There were some parts I enjoyed. This is a novella, and I really enjoyed the beginning, which was a lot of the setup, showing the atmosphere and everything. However, it never changed. This book felt like all set up somehow. And while this is a series, I do believe that each book is self-encompassed. So there was no reason for it to be all set up. And just, like, sometimes all of a sudden there would be, like, some action, but mostly just felt like description. And the relationship between the two people just kept them, like, jumping, like, to different places. I did not like it. I didn't hate it, but I didn't like it. Then I read What If 2 by Randall Munroe, which I absolutely loved. This is, like, one of my top favorites. This is a science non-fiction book where Randall Munroe used to be an engineer, and now he writes the XKCD comics, webcomics. And this is basically people ask him silly questions about science, and then he tries to answer them in a silly, serious way, and it's really great, and it's really fun. And I thought he did a very good job of explaining concepts simply without dumbing them down. However, I'm not very scientific, so I don't know, actually. Okay, then I'm just going to put all these together, because this is a trilogy, even though it took quite a bit before I got to the next 2, but I read The Search Part 1, The Search Part 2, and The Search Part 3 by Gene Luen Yang. This is a comic trilogy, which follows a comic trilogy, which follows the TV show Avatar: The Last Airbender, and in the TV show Avatar: The Last Airbender, we discover that one of the characters' mom vanished when he was a kid, and we never get the answer of what happened to her. And this comics trilogy showed us the answer of what happened to her. And so these comics, they do have the main plot, which is that, and then they have a B plot, which is our characters are trying to, like, help these people who need to get a spirit to answer their request. And I don't think the balance between those 2 parts was done the greatest, but it was okay. That was something that did feel off to me in all these comics. Like, in all these comics, I felt like either we had too much of the A plot or too much of the B plot. But overall, I did enjoy them, and I just want to see what happens next. Because there are more comic trilogies following it. Okay. Then, another favorite, I read Don't Trust Fish by Neil Sharpson. This is an amazing picture book. So basically, it's a picture book about how you shouldn't trust fish. And it is hilarious. The illustrations are great. The text is great. The way the picture book is built overall together is great. And I love it. And you have to read it. So I think Don't Trust Fish and What If 2 were like my two favorite books that I read. Then I read A Universe of Wishes, edited by Danielle Clayton. And I put it as read because it's a short story anthology. It's a speculative YA short story anthology, and the story I skipped over was the last one. And so I was like, maybe I should count it as a DNF because I didn't finish the book. But in short story anthology, sometimes I'll skip over one in the middle, and then I'll count it as read. So I counted it as read. And overall, I thought most of these stories weren't good for one reason or another. I have a whole vlog about it, so you can look at that. And yeah. And then the last story was Propaganda. So okay, then I read Something Fishy by Nancy Krulik, and I'm just going to put it here also. I also read a little later on A Kitty Kazoo Christmas by Nancy Krulik. Why I'm putting them together is that they are two in the same series, so I don't think they're next to each other. You can read the series out of order. So this series is called Kitty Kazoo Switcheroo, and it's about our main character, Katie, whose nickname is Kitty Kazoo. And in the first book, she makes a wish that she has a really bad day, so she makes a wish that she wishes she could be anybody but herself. And she gets that wish to come true. Every book, the magic wind comes and turns her into someone or something, could be an animal, else for a while. So these two books, I both enjoyed them less. And Something Fishy, the switcheroo did not happen until the end, and then it was like very obvious what was going to happen. But overall, I did enjoy Something Fishy. I thought the B plot and the A plot were balanced well, and I didn't really mind. I felt like that was the one that I read that I felt like when reading it, I wouldn't mind if these were realistic fiction books and not switcheroo books. So overall, I did like it, even though I do have the criticism that the switcheroo didn't happen until the end. It was very obvious what was going to happen during the switcheroo, and it was for a very short time. Then, A Kitty Kazoo Christmas actually had 3 switcheroos, but the way this book was built felt very weird. As I said, there were 3 switcheroos, so there were basically 3 stories, and it felt like they were put in backwards. Like, the first story happens closest to Christmas, and the last story happens the farthest from Christmas, when it should be the opposite. And I liked the last story the most. I thought that was the most well done, and the first and second stories just were not for me. Like, I feel like they were like too much, here's the Christmas spirit, and obviously I don't celebrate Christmas, so I don't care about that. So why did I read A Kitty Kazoo Christmas? Because it's part of the series. Okay. Then I read Goodnight, Mr. Clutterbuck by Marie Kunas. This is a picture book about this goat who lives in a town of animals, but they were like people, the animals that act like people, and he sleepwalks every night, and he doesn't know it, and causes all sorts of chaos and stuff. I thought it was, overall, the concept was good, the story was cute and funny. However, I thought the pages themselves were too cluttered. We would often have 2 scenes on the same page, and that's already like on either the same page or 2 pages like next to each other, like, picture books like this. And that's already cluttered in general for a picture book. However, it was even worse because the pictures were already full of stuff, and while it was very fun because you had all these Easter eggs to look at, the fact that they were 2 together made it just feel like cluttered and overwhelming. But I would recommend it overall. I felt overwhelmed. Then I read Hour's Flight by Mercedes Laquet. This was a reread for me. So this is the second in a trilogy where we follow Talia, who is part of the Heralds. Heralds are these people who serve the Queen, and they go out around the country and help serve as judges, tax collectors, etc. So in the first book, we see her recovering from abuse and training, and this one is she's still a trainee, but she goes out with someone who's her mentor, and they go and do the things, and it's still also a lot about her recovering from abuse. I did enjoy it more this time around. The first time I read it, I was like 14, and this is definitely while the first book is aimed at 14-year-olds, this one is like a new adult book. And I think the main thing that made me enjoy it more now was that I read quicker, so when I was reading the part where they were stuck in the snow, it didn't feel like ages and ages and ages. There's still this character that I don't like. However, and I don't know how I feel about how he's written. But overall, it was okay. That's all I can say. Then I read A Sorcerer Comes to Call by T. Kingfisher. And this one I definitely did not like. I think this one and A Mimicking of Known Successes. A Universe of Wish is definitely my worst. But then this one and A Mimicking of... I don't know. A Universe of Wish is definitely my worst. So maybe not this one. This one also I feel like it more annoys me because I don't understand why people like it. But to tell you what it's about, it's basically... We have our two main characters are Cordelia and Hester. And Cordelia's mom is a sorceress who's very abusive, and she wants to marry a rich guy, so Cordelia can marry a rich guy, and then she can have all the money. So she goes and she ends up finding a way to stay in the house of Hester's brother, who is a rich guy. And basically, it's about them fighting her, your caustic stuff. However, this book did two main things wrong. One, it advertised itself as a Goose Girl retelling, which it is not in any way, shape, or form, nor is it a fairy tale retelling. It does not feel like a fairy tale at all, and while that's not bad in and of itself, building yourself up as an expectation to be either a Goose Girl retelling or at the very least a fairy tale retelling and not being that does disappoint. And then the other thing that the author and that could just be a publisher's fault, but the thing that the author did badly is that she did not have a good balance between humor and seriousness. This book had very serious parts, and then they would switch suddenly to humor parts. And it did not feel like, oh, they're dealing with the serious parts with humor. Like, that's how it feels like in Animorphs, for instance. It did not feel like that in this book. It was just like switch. Or suddenly go from humor to serious, which is more okay because that can happen more, I feel like. Like, stuff can, that can happen, but yeah, she did not do a very good job of balancing the humor and the seriousness. This is also apparently a horror book. I did not feel that at all, and that partially was because that she did not do a good job of balancing humor and seriousness, and also partially because there was like one horror element. So how am I supposed to feel that a 300+ page book is horror if there's one horror element? So I do not know. That's why I'm annoyed at this book. Like, I do not know why people like it so much. I do not know why it's marked as horror. I just don't get it. Okay, then I read some books that I already mentioned because they were part of the series, and then I read The Diaries of Adam and Eve by Mark Twain. And this is another book that's just not for me, and I wouldn't have picked it up. I already know I do not like Mark Twain's writing style, though I did enjoy it more in here than in Tom Sawyer or Huckleberry Finn, books of which I DNF'd. The reason I picked this up was for a prompt to read the 9th book I see on social media that happened to be The Diaries of Adam and Eve. And the thing about this that I knew I wouldn't like, besides the fact that I don't like Mark Twain's writing style, even though I felt it was more okay here for me, is that I feel like when you write something like this, you're kind of, even if you don't mean to, saying what you think the prototype of man and woman are. And that's just not for me. So, like, I can't really say anything, but I did feel like he made Adam super dumb for no reason also. I was like, that's kind of weird. Like, not, like, even ignoring that it kind of feels like it's a prototype of man and woman, I just made Adam super dumb for no reason. Then I read The Art of Loving by Erich Fromm. This is a philosophy book about what love is. I did really enjoy it. While there were ideas in here that I agree with, ideas that I didn't, but I did feel that it was very well presented. The way he built stuff up and then would like come back to an idea and build it up again and come back to an idea and build it up again was very well done. Okay, then I read Jewish Pirates of the Caribbean, how a generation of swashbuckling Jews carved out an empire in the New World in their quest for treasure, religious freedom, and revenge by Edward Kritzler. This is not a good book. So you can tell from the title what it's supposed to be about. It's not about that. It's about Jewish people, Sephardic Jews specifically, during the Age of Discovery, which is fine. I did enjoy that aspect of it. I didn't not enjoy this book. I did enjoy that aspect of it. However, it's not what it says about. Plus, it is not well written. It jumps all over the place, both chronologically and topically, and there are some, and I don't know how much to trust the stuff that are written here, because he makes mistakes. Like, on the same page, he'll say that one thing happened X, and then he'll say the same thing happened Y. And so I don't really know how much to trust this book. Like, I would really like to have read it and feel like, oh, I know more about the Sephardic diaspora during the Age of Discovery. But I don't really think I can say that. Okay, then I read Stranded, a mostly true story from Iceland by Ivar Thora Benediktsson and illustrated by Anne Wilson. This is a historical nonfiction picture book about the author's grandfather who went to explore the island of Surtsey. Surtsey is a volcanic island that erupted in I think it was late 1950s or early 60s, and his grandfather was a young man then and went to explore it then. This book was overall, it wasn't like, oh my god, amazing in the writing. Also, the writing was humorous and fun, but I love the illustrations. The illustrations really both tied into what was happening in the story, and there was like a little bit about, and there's this little bit about Icelandic myth that kind of weaves the story together, and it really built that up and focused on it. And also the colors were so vibrant and beautiful. I was reading this as an ebook, but they were still so vibrant and beautiful. So yeah, 10 out of 10 for the illustrations, 8 out of 10 for the writing. So yeah, great book. Then I read A Fatal Crossing by Tom Hindle, and this is another book where I enjoyed most of it, and then I felt that the ending disappointed me. So this is a book about basically it's a historical mystery. I'll read to you the back. When a man's body is found on deck, ship's officer Timothy Birch, that's our main character, is ready to declare the death a tragic accident. But Scotland Yard Inspector James Temple is certain there's more to this misfortune than meets the eye. Mounting an investigation, the pair uncover the theft of a priceless painting and encounter a string of suspects with secrets to hide. So this carries a lot. We have actually a main mystery and then a B-plot mystery that ends up tying into the A mystery here, and I overall enjoyed it. This does not have a lot of character development, it does not have a lot of world building, but I think it overall, except for the detective, sketches out both the characters and the world in a very few lines that does make you feel who the characters are and what the world is like. However, the ending, again, there was a twist. I did see this one coming, but it was not built up well. There's at some point the main character, this is in first person perspective, the main character lies to us to give us a red herring, and you should never have the main character, if it's in first person perspective, you should never have the main character lie to give for a red herring, unless they're supposed to be unreliable, but he's not. And then on the other hand, the reason I suspected this was going to happen at all was a thing that didn't make sense for it actually happen in the real world. It was obviously put in the book, so you would suspect something. So again, it was that was another one where it was I loved it, except for the ending. Then the last two books I read were Speak Up by Rebecca Burgess. This is a middle grade graphic novel about a girl who's autistic, and she and her friend have this YouTube channel where she sings and writes the music. Sorry, not he. They write the music. Her friend writes the music. And then they hear about a talent show, and her friend really, really wants them to go on the talent show. But she doesn't, because she doesn't want to face people. And she also has a bully, and I just felt that the story was okay. The illustrations were okay. The writing was okay. There was nothing special about it. It had some plot points I did not like and have never liked, but appear a lot in stories about bullies. I just thought it was okay. Wouldn't recommend, but wouldn't unrecommend. And then the last book I read was I Guess I Live Here Now by Claire Ahn. Funnily enough, the part that disappointed me in this was not at the end, it was in the middle. So this is a book about a girl it's a YA novel about a girl who her whole life has lived in New York with her mom, and her dad lives in Korea, and that's just how it's been. And now she's 15, she's about to go into 10th grade, and her mom is like, we're moving to Korea to live with your dad. And obviously she's unhappy about this. And the story develops from there. It's a realistic fiction, so, there's not much more to say. However, in this book, wait, let me say the good things first, actually, this time. I really did enjoy the emotional aspect of this. Like, the whole, like, her becoming closer with her dad, the way her relationship with her mom changes, her relationship with her aunt. I did enjoy those aspects, the emotional aspects with regards to her family. However, this book had a lot of mistakes that a good editor could have, like, just timeline mistakes and stuff like that a good editor could have fixed, but this editor did not. And it was just really confusing. It made me, like, think that there were, like, mysteries and stuff going on. And then I came to the end of this book and was like, wait, what? That was all just editing mistakes? So, yeah, I would not read another Claire on until she gets a better editor. It was like one of those books where, you read the acknowledgments and they're like, oh my god, editor, thank you so much. I couldn't have done this without you. And you're like, you should have done it without her. But yeah. Anyways, those are all the books I read in September of 2025. Thank you for watching.